Hey guys, welcome back to another video, and I have my Glenfield Model 75 with me. Finally got the parts in to repair this thing. If you're having ejection and feed issues where this basically acts like a single shot, stay tuned. We're going to go through how you may be able to possibly fix this. At least this is a particular problem I know several people have had. And even though this is the Model 75 Glenfield, this will work for older Model 60s, the Sear variants, all of those things. If you have a similar rifle to this one, it should be a similar breakdown. There's maybe a few different pen positions, but hopefully this tutorial helps a couple of you out there. And with that said, let's go ahead and get this thing broken down and get it fixed. Now, before we begin, I want to share a previous clip showing the malfunctions I was having with this rifle. And once you've seen that, it may give you a better idea of what you're kind of experiencing, and hopefully when we repair this rifle, resolve all those issues. First thing we'll be using is 22 LR, and I'm just going to use some standard velocity federal lead bullets. This is a Glenfield Model 75 is what I'll be shooting it out of. One thing to note is that I know this is not going to function properly. I need a feed throat conversion kit in order to get this to work properly again. But if anybody knows where one is available, I would greatly appreciate it because I have been looking for one for a couple years now. All right, 22 LR is up. Let's see what we can do with this. Yeah, kind of figured that'd be the case, but that's all right. Well, the 22 isn't going to be playing nice today. Unfortunately, this feeding ramp is just too worn out. It's a two-piece construction, and the conversion kit takes that and makes it a one-piece and much more reliable. So we're going to go ahead and move on to 25 ACP. Well, hopefully that video did a good job explaining everything. Now, if you've already taken this rifle apart, cleaned it, things of that nature, that didn't help. Well, now let's delve into some of the mechanical fixes you can make to hopefully get this rifle back in running shape for many years to come. In terms of tools that are going to be needed, this is a cotter pin I kind of flattened out and then just put a little hook on. That'll come in handy in a little bit. Also have a couple of picks, 99-cent pack from Harbor Freight. This ought to do the job. And then a screwdriver. I might need some needle nose pliers here in a second as well, but it's relatively easy tools and rudimentary tools. We'll go ahead and flip the rifle upside down. We're going to move this screw, and the one back here. We can leave this Phillips head in. That's just going to hold the trigger guard in so we don't have to disassemble that. But we'll go ahead and get all these screws out, and that'll allow us to remove the stock from the receiver, the barrel, everything of that nature. With all three screws removed, I want to go ahead and take out our tube for our cartridges, take off this ring, and then the stock will just pop right off. I'll put that to the side, and that leaves us with the barrel, receiver, and our tube magazine. So the next thing we'll do is take out these portions. You got two screws on each side, right here in these corners, and some of these are going to be different. Some of them on the newer models, they have pins that go through, and this one you have two screws that are flatheads that go into each other. One's male, one's female. So when we go to remove these, it'll allow us to remove the upper and lower portions of the receiver out of the way. So we'll take that one out. And this one we ought to be able to take out. If not, we could just pop it out using the pick, and I believe we'll have to do that, so I'll just take my pick, push it through. Yep. I like to go ahead and take these, just go ahead and screw them into one another so I don't lose any parts. Makes it easier to keep everything together. And now this front one. And now we have that screw out of the way, put those two together. And that's going to allow us to remove the receiver and our breech bolt from the action underneath, which is our cartridge carrier, our hammer, and our buffer. So now we have all this out of the way, we can go ahead and take out the breech bolt, and we will have to do this. The best way I found is on the bottom right there, grab your finger, pull it up a little bit and back, or you can even grab from the bolt face. Once you got it like that, move your charging handle, Set that to the side and then gently lift this up and out. What you're going to have is that recoil spring on the back, that metal rod end. If this is bent or in pretty bad shape, go ahead and replace it now. This one is relatively new. It's in good shape, so I'm not too worried about it. And that breech bolt, well, I cleaned it up not too long ago. It's a little dirty, but it is not bad, and we won't be putting this back in anyway. We're going to be putting another breech bolt back in. So, all right, now that's done, take a quick break, and we'll get this apart, and I'll show you some of the things we're going to be replacing and explain some of the concepts here. Now we have this all apart. We're going to be replacing a couple of things here. We're going to be doing the feed throat conversion. So I'll take this old style of feed throat out. We'll put a new style in. I'll explain those differences. I want to go ahead and replace my buffer pad. This one is cracked, as you may be able to see, with one of these new TPU ones. And since I'm doing the feed throat conversion, I'm also going to need another bolt since I don't have the ability to actually machine a part to spec. Let me explain what I mean by that. So what you have here is this tab. And on these old ones, this tab is what's supposed to kick the bullet out. This is actually what pops the bullet out of your bolt and flings it to the side. So when this bolt comes through, let's see if I can get a sample. It comes up, pulls the round off the feed ramp. You see how it comes together. Slides through, you shoot, boom, gets sent back. When it hits this part right there, pops the cartridge out. Well, these older bolts, you may be able to see, they're 90 degrees. So it fits with this tapered, or 45 degrees I should say, and it fits this tapered 45-degree angle, so it's nice and smooth. However, with the new feed throats, they're actually 45 on one side, 90 on the other. So you can see that right there. That's a 90, that's a 45. This bolt will not properly fit this new feed throat. You see the gap there. Now, you can do two things. You can either taper this one down towards 45 degree to match this old bolt. I don't have the equipment to do that, so the cheaper alternative for me was to simply buy another bolt. So I went ahead and got, this is the number 2. There's 6 of these different kind of design bolts. This is number 2. And this style has a 90-degree face on one side, 45 on the other, which is the newer design. As you can see, it's a lot better fit, and that bolt is riding where it needs to be. So that's what I decided to do. Number 2 bolt, that's what's needed, without the bolt hold open for the Glenfield Model 75. These bolts are, like I said, 6 iterations, so that's going to differ depending on the exact model you have. But I'm pretty sure the Glenfield 75s, the number 2 is what you need. Now, I want to go ahead and take a minute, clean this bolt up real quick, and then we'll start disassembling the receiver so we can start replacing these parts. I need to relieve some spring tension. So right here on the cartridge arm going up and down, there's spring tension, and then back here on the hammer, there's also spring tension. So the hammer is what hits the firing pin. Obviously, it makes the firing pin go into the back of the bullet and go off. Fortunately, there's a little, right here's a stem for it. There's a little hole in the back, and that's what I'm using this cotter pin for. I want to place this through the hole in the back, and that makes sure that that does not come through this plate, and then you're going to have to try to get this back in with spring tension, just not a good time. So with this cotter pin, I'll go ahead and pop that into this hole real quick. There we go. I'm just going to let that hang. And then back here, where your trigger actually makes contact with the spring to release the hammer, that is what you're going to press next. So put tension on your hammer because you don't want this flying out. You don't want to fly it all over the place. Make sure not to hit this little side portion, your bolt release, otherwise it won't let the hammer go. And you just saw how I slowly let the hammer up. I may have missed it. So, holding the hammer, I am pressing this tab right here. I'm slowly letting the hammer come up and releasing that strain. So now the cotter pin's holding that in place, the hammer's done. Now I can release this spring over here. And do that, I'm just going to use a pick. I want to take this spring You saw how I just popped it? It hangs under the bolt or the cartridge lifter. So I just popped it out of the way. And now on this side, I want to go ahead, move that out of the slot, and that's dangling freely. I believe that is all my pressure relief that I actually need to. So I should be good to go ahead and disassemble the rest of this receiver. So we finally made it down to where we really need to get. We need to remove these two C clips right here, or E clips, I apologize. And then we're going to be able to lift this face up. Now you want to make sure your buffer is facing back and your cartridge carrier is facing forward. Otherwise things are going to go flying and it's not going to be fun to reassemble this. So I really don't have the proper tool to get these clips out. I'm going to try to use a pick and go from there. But I just want to make sure to have my thumb or some type of finger on these so whenever they do pop out, they're not going to go flying across the loom. All right, there's one. And there's two. If those removed, I should be able to just pull this plate up nice and gently. Get it moved out of the way. There we go. With that plate removed, we have access to everything we really need right here. First thing we'll go ahead and do is remove this old buffer pad. Once we get that out of the way, I want to make sure the diameter of the holes are similar. In this case, they are. They use the much smaller one, I think the 0.15. Also going to take a look back here. There is a little bit of corrosion and pitting back here on this receiver plate. I really don't know the history of this rifle, but I imagine this is the first time it's ever been taken apart to this extent. So I'll go ahead and spray that with a little bit of WD-40, and that's going to make some of you cringe. But again, this is just a utilitarian rifle for me. I'm not too concerned about it. I'm just going to take a brass brush, clean any of this up that I can without removing anything else. With all that cleaned up, I'm just going to take the new buffer pad and just slide it on the pin. Easy as it can be as far as installation goes. Now, got to remove some of this old stuff. There is the old cartridge lifter slash feed throat, and this is the new one. Now we will have to make a modification to this one. So you see there's no pin up here on top, and what's right here is hollowed out. Well, there's no bolt or no place on this receiver for this to go through, so we're gonna have to shave this down flat in order to make this modification work. However, good news is on this other side we won't have to make any modifications. As you can see, it matches up with the locations of the old feed throat. So we'll shave this one off when we go to install it, but we'll go ahead and take out our cartridge lifter. And we also need to take out this spring as well. Now this can be removed several different ways. Bench grinder, if you had an angle grinder, if you absolutely had to, you could use it on this. Fortunately, I have a small Dremel. I'm going to try it with this first before I go into anything bigger. I'm just going to take my time and just try to shave this away. That made much quicker work of it. That Dremel just wasn't getting the job done. Now I'll finish it up. Alrighty. That is not the prettiest, but it is smooth and flush now. So that can be reinstalled. So we have our three other new pieces that go in here as well. Now this is shaved down. We can go ahead and start with our spring. That'll have to go in first. We'll go ahead and lift it up. You want this longer bar to be pointed further back and the smaller one to be pointed closer to you. We're going to put that in like this for now, because eventually that bar is going to ride in a groove right here on the feed throat, and this will be pushed down underneath for pressure, and that's what's going to give the cartridge lifter pressure to lift up on it. Now, We have our cartridge lifter and this big piece that hangs from the bottom, and the angle you want it down towards your mat. We're going to place that in, and you can see it goes up through the bottom and top smoothly. So go ahead, the pin on the hammer, we'll place that there. Place our feed throat into its resting place, and we can go ahead and place the plate back on it and start reassembly of this. Right. So I have the other portion of the receiver piece back on. Everything's lining up smoothly. I'm checking gaps, making sure everything is nice and tight. Looking over here, I'm seeing if this is flush, where I had to strip that down a little bit, and it is. So we are good to go here. Now that's complete. This, as mentioned, is supposed to ride right there in that gap. Now, this bar is not pointed quite in the right orientation, so I want to bend this back in place a little bit to face that way. I just realized my audio hasn't been working this whole time, so here's what's been done. This spring right here, portion of the spring is moved up top, had to be adjusted. I want it just a little bit higher than the feed throat, but I still want it very much to the side so it'll fit into the grooves of this bolt as it's riding along the receiver rails like that. The other thing I did is that the other portion of this spring right here, this lifter, it goes beneath that lifter. So if you look at my thumb from the bottom where it's pointed, it's right there. Here, I'll even use a screwdriver pointing at the bottom too. That might make it easier, but you just push it from the top down right there underneath that cartridge lifter. That's what gives it pressure to lift up the cartridge. Now you can see whenever it's pressed down, it wants to return to the upright position. So when the bolt pulls it back, pushes it down, grabs another cartridge, comes back up, the other one's ejected from this, and this, when it brings it up, the bolt comes forward, slides the new one into the barrel. So for the most part, this is all completely assembled. I am missing an E-clip right there. I will get that whenever I go to the store sometime this afternoon. But for all intents and purposes, I don't think that's going to be a huge problem to go ahead and test this out, reassemble everything, and give it a shot, make sure we fix the problem at hand. So we have our new bolt breech, and this is going to go inside. So first and foremost, we'll go ahead and place the spring in the rear. So we get that spring in. There's a little slot back here. There's a metal pin. Push that in. Just be nice and gentle. There we go. Now we're going to pull this back and we're going to add our charge handle. This is the non-bolt open variety. So we do that. Just got to fiddle with it a little bit. There we go. So now that is back in place. Able to move that nice and smoothly. And yes, once I do get everything assembled, I am going to add a little bit of gun oil. We can go ahead, place our assembly in. So, as before, go ahead and set that down. This pushes into place. We have our two smaller screws that go into each side. So one right there. Do the other one. Now the two that go onto each side on the rear. And this is bolting up quite nicely. Everything seems to be going in pretty kosher, so shouldn't have an issue. All right. And that is our receiver back in place. At the home stretch now, fortunately, go ahead, put our barrel receiver, everything like that back in. I'm going to hold it in place. Go ahead and put my band in. Give me that front point of contact. Put the swivel and screw in as well. Our large bolt goes into here. We'll set that down, screw it in. And the last bolt, and we are finally done with this assembly. And we are good. That is completely assembled. Function check again. It's feeling good. I want to grab a couple of rounds, put in this chamber, and without firing, we're going to go ahead, run a couple through, and see how they run through. I'm going to quickly load this rifle up with 4 shots. I also checked the crossbolt safety, made sure it was functioning properly. We're just going to do a dry function test and see how this works. All right, so here we go. Got it ready. Just going to rack it back quickly. Fed, ejected, fed, ejected, fed and ejected all 4 rounds. So that's a pretty good sign. I want to go ahead, get this thing ready, and we'll go take it out and do a couple of shots with it. I want to do my best to keep this test brief. Lots of yellow flies and stuff, don't want to get eaten up. But got 7 rounds loaded up of the X Tactical. This is a little bit more expensive ammo. I already got one in the chamber. Let's go ahead and set it on fire. We're just going to take some shots. All this back here, there's miles and miles. I think it's like 5,000 or 8,000 acres of just nothingness. And this is the only vehicle path, so we're good to go. It looks like we did have one. Yep, failure to eject right there. Keep going. And I think that's it. Yep. So one failure to eject. I'm not going to complain too much about that. It could have been a round that just didn't get quite grabbed sufficiently, or the brass may have just been tapered too much. Let's try the Aguila stuff, which is cheaper, and we'll see if it can run that as well. Now I have some Aguila Interceptor hollow points loaded up. They are 40 grains. Let's take a couple of shots and see what we can do here. And go well. All right. Is that it? It is. Those things are running hot. All right, so had 2 failure to ejects. That could just be that little spring that needs to be adjusted, but it's a heck of a lot better than the single shot it was. Keep in mind, this is still a 50-year-old gun now, so might be a little finicky. I want to throw a couple more shots, just mixing those 2 up a little bit, and just do a little bit more of a function test, and we'll call it a day. These are feeding quite well, so it's fixed and resolved that issue. I think those are light primer strikes is actually the issue I'm having with that. I think that's empty, yep. Yeah, very, very faint primer strike seems to be the issue there. So, seeing a very small indentation, but not much. So, it might just be a firing pin that needs to be replaced, and I could take the one out of the old bolt if needed and put it in this one. So, this is a used bolt. It's not brand new. If that issue is an issue, well, that's a pretty quick and easy fix since I already have the parts. And that's all she wrote. All right, well, this firearm is functioning as far as the fix with the ejection, as well as getting it to load into the chamber, things of that nature, chambering. So extremely happy with how all this turned out. Like I said, firing pin might need a little bit of work, maybe a little dull, but that's really all there is to it. But guys, I hope you enjoyed this video on the Glenfield Model 75. Hopefully it gave y'all some help as far as maybe diagnosing what problems you may be having with a rifle that is this one or very similar to this. And if you enjoyed today's video, please make sure to share, like, subscribe for more. And as always, thanks for watching.